In this video, we're going to go and look at two budget options for monitor control. That's coming at around £50 in the UK, and one of them is the most £10 monitor controller I've ever heard. Ever heard? Never heard. I can't even hear it. So let's start! Straight in!
Do you even need a monitor controller? If you're working on one set of speakers and have an easily accessible volume control on your audio interface, then probably not. And we discussed this in our review of the Audient Nero last year, so check out that video, the link is in the description. Floppy put it there. The Behringer Studio M is a passive hardware monitor controller that simply gives you two sets of source inputs, A on a pair of balanced or unbalanced jacks, and B also with a stereo 3.5mm jack option and two sets of outputs. There's no headphone output at all, as this is a purely passive device, so it has no power to drive a headphone amp. On the front we see a large volume knob which actually feels pretty good, and A/B switching for the input source and your two output sources, as well as mono, mute and dim functions. And that's about it, but how does it sound?
In normal use, it doesn't really sound like anything at all, which is exactly what we want from a monitor controller. So that's the most important function nailed, transparency. I heard a slight roll off in the very top end when activating the dim function, but if you're quickly pressing that to have a conversation with someone in the room, then that doesn't really matter. Switching between the inputs and outputs was completely silent with no clicks or pops coming out the speakers. The mono button works exactly as you'd expect, mute cuts the signal completely, and the volume control feels very nicely weighted and slightly detented. As with many passive devices, it can be susceptible to hum, so needs to be positioned carefully. I found a slight hum was apparent if I positioned it over the controller of our standing desk or if I had it too close to external power supplies, and this was particularly noticeable with the volume control kind of around the middle of the range. Now it's worth pointing out that I only really noticed this when connected to our ATCs. They have a 4-way amplifier on each speaker that provides 850 watts a side, so there's a lot of power there, and those amps run open. There's no attenuation in the signal path, no volume control, they're always at 10. When I tried this with smaller, less powerful near fields, any hum was barely perceptible. Stereo matching throughout the range is very good, although one channel does disappear slightly before the other at the very bottom of the range. And one thing I would really like to have seen is a polarity control, so you could quickly check the side signal or any phase issues. But for 50 quid, if you need a cheap monitor controller that does what it says on its own, made of tin, then it works.
Next up is unusual in that it's a software option from developers Ginger Audio. Ground Control Room is an application that can run not only in conjunction with your DAW, but system-wide, and has a very useful function in this latter case that we'll cover in just a minute. The user interface offers you a simple way to route audio between different applications on the host computer, or external inputs fed in via a suitable audio interface, and similarly offers outputs that can then be routed to other apps, a second DAW, or a streaming app such as OBS for example, or to separate outputs on your interface for monitor control. One feature that I really love is that any of the inputs and outputs can be easily switched between or locked in and therefore mixed. So various inputs can be combined and you can easily switch between 3 sets of full range speakers with or without a sub, or listen to the sub on its own. But the real killer feature for me is that you can insert any of your plugins into any of the inputs or outputs. This makes this little piece of software supremely useful for processing in real time when live streaming, and even for processing Spotify or another streaming service when just listening to music for pleasure. But let's get the grumpy traditionalist's take on monitor control via software. Can I maybe sense a bit of a rant coming on? I think so.
Every now and then a piece of software comes along that I genuinely love. Now, it doesn't happen often. iOS 1, when the iPhone was first launched, was probably the last time. And I'd be the last person to suggest that a software monitor controller was a good idea. Surely that needs to be hardware. Well, no, it doesn't. And having played with Ground Control Room for only a day, I can honestly put my hand on my heart and say it's the best piece of audio software we've ever reviewed on this channel, and I can only wish that we'd thought of it. It's not perfect, so let's start with what I love and then cover what I feel could be improved. And the first thing I love is the sound. It is genuinely the most transparent monitor control solution I've never heard, and that's because you don't have to plug it into your signal path because it doesn't physically exist. I had it installed and set up and working in minutes. The routing is as easy and intuitive as you could possibly hope for. You can pin the app to the front of your desktop and resize it so it's floating at the front at all times and easily grabbable, and the fact that you can put pretty much any plugin on the inputs, outputs or globally next to the meters is just awesome. One of the hardest tasks for me at the moment is recording tutorial style videos for this channel. It's always a faff to get my mic, the output of the DAW, the input of the DAW and screen recordings all happening and routed where they need to be. It's pretty much a real arseache, but this has made it super easy. I can mix audio that's coming from the system or via the internet without having to route it through the DAW, and I can then send all of that audio out to be recorded with a minimum of effort. As a monitor controller, it has all the features I could ask for, and the mute, mono and adjustable dim controls are fantastic. I can flip the polarity of the left and right channels independently, mute either of them for true one speaker mono listening, and adjust input and output levels independently using the sliders right there next to their respective buttons. The only downside I can see is that it's been a little buggy with regard to some plugins and doesn't particularly like loading them in real time. It's also crashed a few times when I've been buggering around trying to reroute inputs and outputs from various locations, both internally and externally via a multi-channel audio interface. But I've emailed Ginger Audio about this and got a response within an hour, so support is pretty good too. My last gripe is that it is software, and inherently I can't go and grab a big chunky knob and turn the volume up or down.
Yes, you can.
What?
Right click on any of the controls. Go on, try it.
MIDI learn.
Yep, that's right. You can assign either key commands or MIDI control to the ground control room for your own bespoke hardware control.
Sold. I love it. I'll have one. Ginger Audio have given us a promo code which can give you 25% off. You can download this and you can actually give it a trial if you're interested on your own for 7 days. It works completely and fully for 7 days, and you can also get 25% off the retail price using the promo code in the description below and on your screen now. And I'd like to point out that we are not affiliated with Ginger Audio in any way. We don't get any kind of kickback from that promo code at all. We don't get any money, nothing's changed hands. This is just our total honest opinion. I really love it. I think it's brilliant. If it's something you think could be useful for you, give the trial a go, and don't forget 25% off with the promo code. Thanks for watching, and you'll see us in the next one.